Okay, so have you ever heard of a piece of writing that took the world by storm, like crazy popular? I mean, I'm
Hmm.
talking translated into like a zillion languages and
Yeah.
millions of copies printed. Yeah, it's a short essay from 1899 called A Message to Garcia. And get this, even the Japanese military was using it like they found it on Russian prisoners of war.
Wow.
Wild, right? So today we are going to like unpack what made this essay so powerful and what its message means, even today.
You know what's amazing is that it wasn't some big, complicated book or anything. It was a simple essay that the author Elbert Hubbard wrote in just 1 hour.
Seriously.
Yeah, after a dinner conversation with his son. Can you imagine?
No kidding. And it all started with this story from the Spanish-American War, right? About
Yeah.
this soldier named Rowan who had to deliver a message to General Garcia.
Exactly. And they had no idea where Garcia even was. Like, he was deep in enemy territory.
Yeah, super dangerous.
Yeah.
So Hubbard used Rowan's journey, this whole like crazy feat of determination and resourcefulness, to talk about something way bigger than just delivering a message.
Right. He was talking about initiative, being that person who gets things done without needing someone to tell them every little step.
So basically, carrying a message to Garcia became this metaphor for going above and beyond.
Exactly. It became like the shorthand for the dream employee.
Yeah.
The one who doesn't need micromanaging, takes charge, solves problems instead of creating them.
You think anyone's ever put that on their resume?
Uh-huh, probably.
But Hubbard didn't just praise the go-getters, right? He also kind of called out the people who lack that initiative.
Oh yeah, he tells this hilarious story about asking a clerk to look up Correggio in an encyclopedia. And the clerk starts asking all these questions like, who was he? Which encyclopedia was I even hired to do that?
Yeah, I have totally been that clerk.
Me too. But Hubbard was making a bigger point with that story, right?
Totally. He was saying that this lack of initiative, this tendency to overthink and procrastinate, it's like a roadblock to progress like everywhere in work and society, the whole thing.
Exactly. So he's saying that finding people like Rowan, people who just take the bull by the horns and get things done, that's like pure gold for any employer.
For sure. But wait, didn't Hubbard also say that it's not always that simple? Like maybe not every employer deserves a Rowan?
Yeah, that's where it gets really interesting. He acknowledged that not all employers are fair or, create a good environment where taking initiative is actually rewarded.
Right. So it's more complicated than it seems at first glance.
Yeah, there's definitely more nuance to it.
But this essay obviously resonated with tons of people all over the world. I mean, we're still talking about it over 100 years later. What do you think explains why it's still so appealing?
Well, I think it's partly because initiative and resourcefulness, those qualities never go out of style, right? But I also think it speaks to something deeper, this desire we all have to be valuable, to be the person someone can really count on in a tough spot.
Mm,
Like we all kind of want to be the hero of our own story,
yeah.
even if it's just about like acing a project at work or figuring out something tricky.
I totally get that. But here's something that's been kind of bugging me. You know how A Message to Garcia is all about taking initiative?
Uh-huh.
But couldn't that be like misinterpreted? What's
Yeah.
the line between, taking initiative and just blindly following orders, even if they're like kind of messed up?
Oh, yeah, that's a great point. You've hit on one of the biggest criticisms of the essay.
Really?
Yeah. Some people say it promotes blind obedience, like
Mhm.
it doesn't really encourage employees to think critically about what they're being asked to do.
Right. Like, what if Rowan had stopped and been like, hold on, why am I risking my neck to deliver this message? What's the big deal here?
Exactly. And that's a totally valid point.
Yeah.
Especially now, we're encouraged to think for ourselves, challenge the status quo. So this idea of just blindly following orders, it could feel a little out of place.
So how do we make sense of that with the whole like main message of the essay? Is it about finding a balance between taking initiative and, actually thinking things through?
I think that's the key takeaway for modern readers. We don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Right.
Initiative is still super valuable. But it's about combining that with critical thinking, with being able to look at a situation and say, okay, am I just following orders blindly? Or am I doing something that makes sense, with my values and the bigger picture?
So it's like take initiative, but don't leave your brain at the door.
Exactly. And that's how we can update carrying a message to Garcia for today. It's not about blindly doing what you're told. It's about being adaptable, resourceful, and yeah, taking initiative, but doing it in a way that's smart, ethical, and takes into account, the whole context.
Okay, I like that. It's not just about doing, it's about doing smart.
Right. And that's where the whole discussion about workers' rights comes in. Some people argue that a message to Garcia puts too much pressure on the employee, and it doesn't acknowledge that sometimes there are problems within a company or even in society that can make it hard to take initiative.
So it's not always as easy as just telling people, be more like Rowan.
Exactly. Context matters a lot. The essay highlights a valuable trait, for sure, but it was written in a different time with different power dynamics in the workplace.
Right. Things have changed.
So today, it's important to have that nuanced conversation about how we encourage initiative, but also make sure that employees feel valued, empowered, and like they can actually contribute in a meaningful way, you know?
Okay, so we've got this old essay that sparked all these debates. Praise, criticism. We've talked about how its message has changed, how we need to look at it through a modern lens. But where do we go from here? What does carrying a message to Garcia even mean in our crazy, fast-paced world? I mean, Rowan didn't have to deal with constant emails and social media and Zoom meetings.
That's the big question, isn't it? On the one hand, initiative and resourcefulness, those things are probably even more important now than they were back then.
Because everything changes so fast, you have to be able to adapt, think on your feet, solve problems without someone holding your hand every step of the way.
Exactly.
Mm.
But you're right, the whole landscape is different. So carrying a message to Garcia today might be less about a daring adventure and more like navigating a complicated digital project or troubleshooting a technical issue remotely, or maybe even just filtering through all the information overload to figure out what actually matters.
It's like the message itself is different now. It's not about a physical letter. It's about like cutting through all the noise, figuring out what needs to get done, and then stepping up to do it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that might be the hardest part for us today. It's not just about having the skills or the drive.
Yeah.
It's about having that mental discipline to focus, prioritize, to be the one who's like, okay, this is what matters, and this is how I'm going to make it happen.
Which, yeah, it can feel pretty overwhelming sometimes.
But you know what I'm thinking about? We've been talking about this carrying a message to Garcia thing mostly in a work context, but does it apply to like life in general?
Oh, totally.
It's
It's a mindset, a way of approaching any challenge or opportunity. We all have our own Garcias out there, right?
What do you mean? Think about it.
Yeah.
Goals. We want to achieve problems. We got to solve people. We want to help. And sometimes those messages, they don't just come to us easy. We got to be proactive, figure things out, take a chance.
So you're saying carrying a message to Garcia could be anything from like finally starting that side hustle you've been thinking about to just being more present and helpful in your relationships.
Exactly. It's about those moments when we can be the ones who step up, take charge, make things happen.
Yeah.
And you know what? Maybe those little acts of initiative, those personal messages to Garcia, they might inspire other people to do the same.
I like that. It's like a ripple effect of getting things done.
Right.
But here's one last thought I've been having. Hubbard wrote this essay over 100 years ago, right?
Oh.
The world was so different back then.
Right.
If he could see us now dealing with all this modern craziness, what do you think he would say?
That's a good question. He'd probably be blown away by all the technology, right? Like how we can talk to anyone instantly and find information in a second.
For sure.
But I also wonder if he'd be kind of worried about how distracted we are. We always want quick fixes and easy answers.
Like maybe he'd want us to find that balance between using technology and staying true to those core values of initiative and personal responsibility.
Exactly, because in the end, I think the message of a message to Garcia, it goes beyond any specific time period or technology.
Yeah.
It's about tapping into that human potential for courage, determination, that willingness to go the extra mile even when we don't know what's going to happen.
That's powerful. So as we wrap up this deep dive into a message to Garcia, I want to leave you with this. We've explored the history, the nuances, the good and the bad, and how it still matters today. But now it's your turn. What does carrying a message to Garcia mean to you? What challenges are out there calling for you to take initiative, be resourceful, step up, and make things happen?
Maybe it's about taking on a new project at work, or finally going after that creative thing you've been dreaming of. Or maybe it's just being more present and supportive in your relationships. Whatever your Garcia is, we encourage you to embrace that spirit of initiative. Be the one who takes action, solves problems, makes a positive impact on the world around you.
I love that. Because, like Hubbard said over 100 years ago, the world always needs people who are willing to carry those messages that matter. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep carrying those messages that make a difference.